All right. Thank you so much, Justin, for agreeing to a conversation with me today. Please introduce yourself, your name, where you were born, when you immigrated to Canada, and how old are you now?
Okay. My name is Justin Roy Buquiron. I was born in Singapore. I immigrated to Canada in 2003. I was 4 years old then. And I am now 24 years old. Yeah.
Great. Thanks. Um, right. So, do you remember your first few months in Canada? Please describe them to us. Your routine, your experiences, your feelings and thoughts.
I was really young, so the only things I remember was our apartment when we first came to Canada. So we were living in somewhere in Scarborough, and I just remember my first couple months just in apartment running around. Those were my very first memories. I was still a kid, so yeah, that was it.
Right.
But it was tough apparently for my parents because we were immigrants. So my dad is a civil engineer, and he worked at warehouse jobs before actually getting a proper civil engineering job here in Canada. Yeah.
Right. So, how was it growing up in Canada for you an immigrant?
As an immigrant, I was pretty much raised here since we came here. I've had no issues per se. I mean, Canada and Toronto is very diverse as a community, so I never really had any issues of being left out per se. Since I was young, I also learned English pretty fairly quickly, so it was pretty straightforward. Only thing is this, being new to because we also moved a lot, so it's kind of hard trying to get used to every new town that we moved to. Yeah.
Oh, all right. So you remember the moving?
Yes, we moved a
Yes.
lot. That's right.
Right. And how did you cope with that? Can you describe that a little bit more, that experience, and how did you
Well,
cope with that?
I I didn't like moving because I would always lose my friends. It's just like I create these friends for a couple years and then we move to another place somewhere across the GTA, and it's just like, oh man, I have to make new friends. And I'd always be nervous at school because like, oh man, what if I don't make any friends or stuff like that. But I don't know. It just ended up working out. So I didn't really feel I didn't have any issues with growing up here in the elementary schools or high schools. When we eventually moved to our final home in Ajax, I stayed there from grade 5 till now. So since when I was very young, we moved a lot. But once I reached grade 5, we stayed in Ajax ever since. Yeah.
All right. You mentioned friends a lot. How important was having friends for you growing up?
They're important. I would say they're very important. I mean, you can't do everything yourself, right? And you can't be by yourself all the time. You get pretty lonely and stuff like that. What do you do when you're alone all the time? Sure, you can play video games, sure you can read, but it's always nice to have someone to talk to. And that's why I like having my friends. They're also very important because now that I'm like, in the industry, I have multiple friends working in different companies, though we're in the same engineering, electrical and computer engineering. Having those connections is very important. So yeah, I friends are pretty important. Yeah.
All right. So now we can segue. You mentioned your profession. We can segue to that. So what do you do
Yes.
now as a profession, and how did you get to
So
that?
okay, so I am a silicon design engineer, which is part of electrical and computer engineering. Um, Ever since I was a kid, I've always loved computers, PCs, and stuff like that. I've always used to play Microsoft Train Simulator on the computer. My dad installed it for me, and I've just played that game like almost every single day. And it got to a point where I took apart the PCs, but it didn't work when I put it back together, and my dad got very angry. But I just loved looking at like oh man, how does this work? Like what does this component do and stuff like that. And eventually, I knew I wanted to be a computer engineer, and recently during when I was in elementary school, I learned about these companies AMD, Intel, NVIDIA, those three big companies, which are very huge in the PC market space. And so those three companies, you could build a PC with their components, right? And I've always been interested with AMD because Intel has been dominating the market for years on end. And so I've always been like cheering, like, come on, like I've been hoping their products to get better. And well, years passed by. I was still going through high school. I took academic courses, which just related to computer engineering. I didn't take any biology or anything like that. I just focused. I know what I want to do, so I just focused my programs into computer engineering. And so I got into Ryerson University. Uh, did my first couple of years there. It was pretty lonely because none of my high school friends went to Ryerson. It was just me. So I was just in this place of like walking around just by myself. But eventually I made friends. So back to the studies. So completed my first 3 years, and I found out that AMD had an office in Markham here in Toronto. And I was like, oh shoot, I could apply for an internship there for our gap between third and fourth year. Ryerson has a co-op program, so you can enroll in the program, and then between third and fourth year, if you manage to land a co-op, you can work for 12 to 16 months at a company. So I managed to land one at AMD after like 60 applications. So yes, 60 applications. And that's I worked in designing, what's it called, um, high-speed serial links for AMD, which think of it as like the USB stuff, PCIe, HDMI, all those connectors between your computer. It's similar to what I do, but more focused on the actual processor itself. So after I completed my 16-month internship, I completed my fourth year, and they hired me back full time. So that's how I ended up working at AMD, which was my dream job. I had a little craft thingy from school in grade 8 that I wanted to work at AMD. Let me see if I could find it real quick. Anyways, but I had
Yes.
this little in grade 8. We had when we were graduating, we had these little stars, and they posted on the wall about like, tell 3 things about yourself. What do you want to be in the future? I had like an AMD sticker. I want to be a computer engineer. So that's how I ended up becoming a silicon design engineer.
That's amazing. So yours is a pretty straightforward path, like
Yeah, I
you
guess
knew what you wanted from a very
yeah,
young age.
exactly. I knew what I wanted from a very
Yeah.
young age. Yeah.
But in terms of navigating, I don't know if it was complicated for you. Like I don't know if it looked complex to you as a child that, okay, I want to be an engineer, but I didn't want to know how to get there, like what program to
I
take,
see.
etc. In terms of
Yeah.
navigating all that and financing your studies, could you tell us a little bit more about that?
So I knew I wanted to become a computer engineer. So I just took it like, one step at a time. So after I graduated elementary, I focused my studies, right? Like I said, just to get into computer engineering programs, whether it be at U of T, Waterloo, UIT, which is now called OnTech and now TMU. So I just focused on mathematics, physics, science, just those subjects. So now that I got that out of the way, I finished grade 12 and grade 11, grade 12. I'm applying to university. Okay, just pick a university to get into computer engineering. I applied to Waterloo, U of T, TMU, and UIT. I couldn't get into U of T or Waterloo, unfortunately, but I got into TMU. And so I just did my computer engineering degree. I didn't know that we had an AMD office. I just focused on my degree until then. And then I figured out that we had a AMD office here in Markham. And I just applied. I mean, if I didn't get into AMD, I could have gone into other companies. There are other companies that do silicon design engineering here in Markham. And computer engineering can vary whether you want to do something more software related or more hardware related. So you also have that stream in university where the first year is kind of general, but as you go further into seniority, so now you're say third year, fourth year, now you can specialize your courses, whether you want to focus more on software or you want to do more of like silicon design or hardware based, like doing PCB stuff or actually SoC stuff. Yeah. So after that, then you can just focus on getting into a company, an entry level company. Then you can do a job hop for a couple of years until you land to the company you want. Because the tech space is, they can be very, let's say, giving. They're very giving, so they can relocate you and stuff like that. So I mean, I guess take it one step at a time, because you'll figure it out.
Right. Tell us about how you financed your studies.
Sorry,
How you financed your studies?
finessed.
Yeah, financed. How you financed your studies?
Finance.
Right.
Okay, finance my study. So my parents had something called an RESP. So when we first came to Canada, I think they've already started saving for my education. So they had, I think that's registered
Yeah.
something about education and saving for your kid. So they managed to, we didn't have a lot of money, of course. So we had to apply to OSAP for the first couple of years. And along with the RESP, I managed to pay off for my first couple of years. And then fourth year rolled around and we didn't have the money. So during my internship, I actually saved up my entire fourth year along with like parking, gas, insurance, phone bill. I saved up my like most of my money to fund for my fourth year. So I ended up paying my entire fourth year by myself. And then I had to apply for OSAT because I still couldn't have the money to complete the semester. So after all, I saved up for my fourth year, and I also paid off my OSAP debts during my internship. So that's how I finished my
That's
my
amazing.
education. Yeah.
That's amazing. And that's commitment. I mean,
I
you paid for
know
it. I mean,
I didn't
your
have lots
final
of money.
year.
Yeah, I didn't
That's
have money to
amazing.
spend myself during my internship, but I know it was well worth it. Yeah.
Right. Right. Yeah, well, you'll recoup all of that and more now that
Yeah,
you're
for
working with
sure.
them. So, what do you like most about being a computer engineer?
What do I like most about being? I mean, it's really cool that I I work with products that are used by everyone. So I mean, I've chips that are in the Xbox, PlayStation. Those are chips from our company, and there are also recently processors that I worked on in my internship that were just released this year. So there's a huge NDA for a couple of years before the product goes out the door. And it's really cool, like how I've worked on a project now and seeing it release a couple of years down the road. And it's just like, hey, like I worked on that. And also, speaking of it, this recently is our product that was released just last year. This is something I worked on during my internship. We worked on something called the Infinity Fabric on this processor. So that's it. Yeah.
Amazing. Is that your happiest day at work when that product was released, or is there another one that you can tell us
Um,
about?
well, it's my happiest day at work was when there was a let's say there was a flaw in the design and they needed to find a solution to say swap these two wires in the design. So they made me as an intern do something that was something of a seniority task to do, and I completed it and it came out the door. And I thought it was like pretty cool that I, as an intern, did something that was pretty meaningful to the design. And also now that I'm also working on something that I can't say, I am now working on some a module in System Verilog that is very important to our design. So it's cool to own a block, have an ownership of a design block. And yeah, I think it's just really cool to know that I've worked on something that I can actually physically hold in my hand, like right here. Yeah.
Congratulations. That means a lot. I know. What do you like the least about it, though?
What do I? Oh man, I could say a lot. It's yes, it's very painful, but it's rewarding. I would say the things I hate the most is in design. The design phases when we design a product. There it goes through 4 design stages, and every time we complete a design stage, we have to give it up to another team so they can test it in the design, and then they can also verify if it works to as an intended purpose. And usually during those deadlines or those near end design stages, and when we submit it, well, let's just say it's not the smoothest thing ever. And so sometimes there are times where it's like late nights where I'm up figuring out what's going wrong. And then my manager's like, oh man, like, can you help put out this fire? I'm doing figuring out this other fire. There's so many bugs and issues and stuff like that. Yeah, it's very hectic. Let's just say it can get very hectic, and that's the one thing I don't like.
Right. The pressure is also higher.
Yes, the pressure. That's right.
Yeah. Right. Okay. So, what do you like the most about living and working in Canada?
Um, what do I like the most about living and working in Canada? Mm, I guess working, I mean, here specifically in Toronto, it's very diverse. My team is very diverse because I actually work with a lot of people globally. So part of my team is actually in California. So we work hand in hand. Although there's a 3 hour time difference, we all work together. And I think those that's really great about these big companies is that like you get to work with other people in different countries. You also it's also I think it's just really great in Toronto that it's very diverse here. Um, I don't see what's it called? I don't see any major issues living here in Canada. Maybe I mean the tax is kind of high, but you can live with that. Yeah, but yeah,
Right. Justin, you are 24 years old. You've obviously achieved so much, but you've obviously have a long way to go as well. But what was the greatest challenge
of
you
course.
experienced in trying to get to where you are right now? And how did you overcome it?
I think my biggest challenge was applying up my application process in getting an internship, because I thought to myself, if I don't get an internship, and it's really important. If you don't get an internship and you finish off 4th year, it's really hard for you to get a entry level job, because interns who have gotten co-op positions the year before and you haven't, they hold an advantage over you. And so I thought to myself that like I need to get a internship during my 3rd year. And so that's why I spent like evenings and multiple days during exam season, during midterm season, just applying to AMD positions. It's not just AMD. I also applied to different companies like Celestica and stuff like that. And so luckily the AMD interviews came first. I had 60 applications. I had 5 interviews. And then on my 3rd interview, I actually got an offer. So I actually had 2 offers, but I had to cancel. So it's really important that you, during your university years, if you can get a co-op position between your 3rd and 4th year, it sets you up for success, because now you have that experience, and you can also use that to apply for different companies even if you don't want to go back to that company. Yeah.
Right. Well, wow, that's persistent. 60 applications,
Yes.
5 interviews. Well, at least finally it paid off, right? Or you have your dream
Yeah,
job.
I remember during one
Congratulations.
interview, it was a software interview, and I got demolished by the questions they gave me. It destroyed my confidence, but I just had to keep pushing through, because they asked me this questions like, okay, so how would you solve this? And I thought to myself, okay, here's how I solve it. And they're like, you're close, but not really. It was a kind way of saying, no, you got it totally wrong. And I got it totally wrong. So yeah, I know as much as interviews are painful, um there are more opportunities out there, so don't worry. Yeah.
That's amazing. Well, share with us your thoughts on fulfillment and success. Like, what is success? How do you measure fulfillment and success?
Fulfillment and success, I would say, I mean, if you enjoy your job and your team is great, my team is personally very kind. That's already fulfilling. It's already I already enjoy, seeing my products out the door, purchasing them, things like that. And success, I would say for me, I haven't gotten where I wanted it to be yet. I actually want to go up more of the corporate ladder and stuff like that. So I'm not in a position where I would say I'm where I want to be. But I'm getting there, and I'd say that's also part of what I'd consider a success, like, that progress, seeing yourself progress through your career. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Agree. So we heard about your, stories detailing your persistence, and just, knowing what you want. But do you have any advice to young people wanting to pursue this profession?
Oh, yeah. It's not easy. Engineering's not easy. You will fail exams, but it's okay. I failed a couple exams, midterms. I've even left a couple labs, just put them zero because I knew I was passing and I didn't want to stress myself. Um, you know, it's okay to scrape by. You don't need to have straight A's for engineering. And remember, if you can't do it on 4 years, university is not a race. I've seen some people take 8 years. I know one person that took 8 years to complete their electrical engineering degree. So it's okay if you space out your courses. And if you need to work, and if you need, I know another person that's also working while taking engineering and he has to space out his courses. That's also okay too. Okay. So don't be so stressed and thinking engineering is possible. You can definitely do it. It's just going to take persistence. Definitely persistence. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Well, let me just stop recording here.